Hey, what's up, guys? Combat Critic here. Let's take a look at this upcoming fight between the former welterweight champion Kamaru Usman and Khamzat Chimaev. Let's get started. If we look at the records of these two fighters, starting with Usman, so Usman has 23 MMA fights. He's won 20 of his 23 fights, lost just 3. If we talk about his 20 wins, he has 9 wins via knockout, just 1 via submission, and 10 via decision. He is not really known for his submissions. We can see that from his record. If we talk about his 3 losses, he has been knocked out once and he has lost via submission once, and he has also lost via decision once in his career. Now let's take a look at Chimaev's record. Chimaev has a 12-0 record, so significantly lesser experience for Khamzat Chimaev in MMA compared to Kamaru Usman. Kamaru Usman has almost twice the number of fights. If we talk about the 12 wins of Chimaev's career, he has 6 wins via knockout and another 5 wins via submission, just 1 win via decision. So most of his fights have ended in a finish. He is a pretty exciting fighter to watch. Now let's take a look at the physical and career stats of both these guys. Starting with the height, it is 6 feet for the Nigerian nightmare Kamaru Usman and it is 6'2" for Chimaev. So Chimaev will have a 2-inch height advantage. If we talk about the weight, so Usman usually fights at 170 pounds, whereas Chimaev has decided to move up and this fight is scheduled at 185 pounds. I think Chimaev will have a size advantage in this fight, even though Usman is a big welterweight, but he's never fought in middleweight, and Chimaev we know missed weight by 7.5 pounds for a welterweight fight. He is the bigger fighter. I think he is bulking. He was bulking for this middleweight fight for quite some time. In the ring, I think he will be the bigger fighter. Now let's talk about the reach. Reach is 76 inches for Usman and it is 75 inches for Chimaev. So Usman will have a slight 1-inch reach advantage. Talking about the stance, Usman is a switch stance fighter. He can fight southpaw as well as orthodox, whereas if we talk about Chimaev, he is an orthodox stance fighter. Talking about the age, so Usman is clearly the much older guy. He is 36 years old now, and if we talk about Chimaev, he is really young. He has not hit his prime yet, and the age difference between these two can really be the deciding factor in this fight. Usman has dipped in his last performance against Leon Edwards. He is not in his prime anymore, whereas Chimaev has not even reached his prime yet. Now let's talk about the career statistics of both these guys, starting with the strikes landed per minute. So this signifies the number of significant strikes that you land on your opponent per minute. On average, this is 4.46 for Usman and it is 7.3, really high for Chimaev. So Chimaev will have an advantage here. He is landing way more significant strikes per minute on his opponents compared to Chimaev. If we talk about the striking accuracy, it is 52% for Usman and it is 59% for Chimaev. So again, the advantage goes to Chimaev. He is more accurate with his strikes. Next up, we have the strikes absorbed per minute. Now this is the number of strikes that you absorb from your opponents per minute, and this is 2.75 for Usman and 3.98 for Chimaev. So Chimaev gets hit more often than Usman, and in this case, the guy with the lower number has an advantage because he is getting hit lesser. So here the advantage goes to Usman. Striking defense is 54% for Usman and it is 41% for Chimaev. So the advantage here goes to Usman as well. Overall, these 4 metrics denote the striking abilities, and the first two that we saw were offensive striking metrics, and in those two Chimaev is ahead, whereas the last two are the defensive striking metrics, and in those two Usman is ahead. So Usman is the better defensive striker, whereas Chimaev's defensive striking is not that good. He got hit quite a lot in that Burns fight. Now let's talk about the wrestling, grappling and BJJ statistics, starting with the takedown average, which is 2.96 for Kamaru Usman and it is 3.98 for Chimaev. So Chimaev uses wrestling a lot more in his game compared to Usman. Takedown accuracy is 45% for Usman and it is 57% for Chimaev. So the advantage here goes to Chimaev. Again, takedown defense is 97% for Usman. I think Going by the official scorecards, he has been taken down just once by Leon Edwards, and he was also taken down by Colby, but the official stats did not count that as a takedown. If we talk about Chimaev, his takedown defense is 100%. I don't think people really try to take him down because of his submission threat. Next up, we have the submission average, which is zero point 0.1 for Usman. Usman does not really go for submissions. And if we talk about Chimaev, it is 3.5, which is way higher than that of Usman's. And we can say that Chimaev is clearly the better BJJ guy in this fight. If this fight goes to the ground, I think Chimaev will have an advantage because he has the submission option available. Now let's take a look at the significant strikes by position for these two guys, starting with Usman. 57% of all the strikes that Usman throws are from the standing position, 18% from the clinch, and 26% on the ground. If we compare this with Chimaev, 41% of all his strikes are from the standing position, just 5% in the clinch, and 54% on the ground. So he likes to really take the fight to the ground. He has more significant strikes on the ground than in the standing position. Next up, let's take a look at the significant strikes by target for these two guys, starting with Usman. So 63% of all his strikes are to the head, 29% to the body, and just 8% to the leg. If we compare this with Chimaev, 87% of all his strikes are to the head. So he is pretty much head hunting all the time in the striking position, and just 7% to the body and just 5% to the leg. Both these guys do not use leg kicks a lot in their game, and we can see this from the stats. Usman throws just 8% strikes to the leg, whereas Chimaev throws just 5% to the leg. If we talk about body shots, Usman goes to the body more often than Chimaev, and if we talk about Chimaev, he is pretty much head hunting all the time. Now let's take a look at some of the previous performances of these two guys, starting with Usman. So Usman, in his last fight, lost to Leon Edwards for the second time in a row, and this fight happened in March of this year. It was a 5 round fight. Usman lost a majority decision, and this was a clear-cut win for Leon Edwards. Usman even looked like he was gassing out in the later rounds, and this is something we have not seen with Usman. Usually his cardio has been really great. If we talk about the fight before this, he also lost to Leon Edwards via knockout head kick. This happened in the 5th round. This fight happened in August of last year. Usman was pretty much winning this fight, except for the first round where Leon Edwards took him down and held him there, also threatened him with a submission. But Usman was clearly winning this fight until the head kick happened, and I think this is where Usman started dipping in his performance. This is where his prime really went away. If we talk about the fights before that, he was on a tear. He beat Colby Covington via unanimous decision, Jorge Masvidal via knockout punch, and this was a knockout of the year. He also beat Gilbert Burns via TKO punches. Gilbert Burns had him hurt at one point, but then Usman recovered and came back to TKO Gilbert Burns. He beat Jorge Masvidal via unanimous decision. Also beat Colby Covington in a close fight, but he finished Colby in the 5th round via TKO. And before that, he beat Tyron Woodley via unanimous decision. This is the fight where he got the belt. Now let's compare this with some of the previous performances of Khamzat Chimaev. So Chimaev in his last fight beat Kevin Holland via submission, bravo choke. It was more like a dars. This fight happened in September of last year, so he is taking more than a year off, and he's coming back to fight this year in October. This finish happened in the 1st round, and Holland did not really get any time to use his striking on Chimaev. Chimaev straight away went for the takedown and got it, and then locked the choke, won the fight. If we talk about the fight before this, he beat Gilbert Burns by unanimous decision, but this was a really close fight. Gilbert Burns had him out, but then Chimaev came back and won the fight by unanimous decision. This fight happened in April of 2022. This was a 3 round fight, and this is one fight where Chimaev really did not use his ground game a lot because Gilbert Burns has that BJJ threat. I don't think that threat Kamaru Usman possesses. So Chimaev will use his wrestling and grappling a lot more in this fight against Kamaru Usman. I think with Gilbert Burns, because he is an ADCC grappler, he has that ability to finish anybody on the ground. Even Usman was not ready to engage with Gilbert Burns on the ground when they fought each other. If we talk about the fight before this, Chimaev beat Li Jingliang in the very first round via rear naked choke, and this happened in October of 2021. He also beat Gerard Meerschaert via knockout punch, and this also happened in the first round. So a lot of first round finishes for Chimaev. Before this, he beat Rice McKee via TKO in the first round, John Phillips via Bravo choke in the second round, and these are the fights that he's had in the UFC. If we talk about the fights prior to the UFC, he has a win over Ikram Aliskerov. Ikram is also a guy who is fighting in this very exact UFC 294 card, and he is an exciting prospect to look for. This is the only loss that Ikram has had, and Khamzat finished him via knockout in the very first round. So this man is really exciting. He is young, and if I have to pick a winner, I think it is a very close fight for Chimaev. But I think I'll go with Chimaev. He is the younger fighter. He has had a full camp. Even though the camp was specifically for Costa, I think it is still advantageous over Usman, because Usman really does not have any time. I don't think he had a camp for this fight. He took the fight on 10 days notice, and also Usman is 36 years old and he is out of his prime. I think Chimaev is about to hit his prime. So the age difference and the fact that Usman has taken this fight on short notice, he is out of his prime. I think all of these reasons compel me to pick Chimaev. I think Chimaev should win this fight. This should be an exciting fight. I think it will get performance of the night or fight of the night, because both these guys are great wrestlers. And if you talk about the striking, Chimaev is ahead in the offensive striking part, whereas Kamaru Usman has really solid defense. Also, Usman has had a lot of big career fights, a lot of 5 round main events where Chimaev is really young and he needs that experience. I think the factors that Usman is ahead is his experience and the fact that he has better defensive striking, whereas if you talk about Chimaev, he has better aggressive striking and he is a better grappler. He has better submissions. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Who do you think wins this fight? I'll see you guys in the next video.